Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So today I'm doing the video that I promised everyone, the getting to know me video. And what I'm going to do inshallah is I'm going to answer the most liked questions that I got. And I'm going to throw in a couple questions here and there that are just some fun questions and, you know, some more serious stuff. And I think I may actually have shot myself in the foot here, because the second most liked question is, what shampoo do you use? Now, I wish I had a cooler answer for you, but I actually just use regular old Pantene Pro V shampoo and conditioner in one. It seems to do the job for me. Now, if you would have asked me what styling products I use, you probably would have gotten a longer and cooler answer. Now, moving on to something a little bit more serious, the first most liked question was, how did you go from graphic design to Medina University? And when did you decide that you want to go there to study? Actually, when I started studying graphic design, I wasn't practicing Islam, and that was the career path that I had chosen apart from being in a music band and all that. But that's why I studied graphic design, and then somewhere in the middle, while I was in college, while I was studying graphic design, I started practicing Islam, and there came a point in my life where I started practicing Islam, and I told myself that, look, if you are going to do something, do it all the way. So if you're going to submit yourself to Allah, if you're going to become a practicing Muslim, then do it to the best of your ability, and part of that is learning and knowing Islam to the best of your ability. And when I asked people and I talked to people, they said, if you really want to know about Islam, you should study Islam. And I figured that one of the better places to go is Medina University. Now, subhanAllah, I still remember till this day that I was deciding, you know, what I want to do in my life, where I want to go, what I want to do. And I decided that, you know, I want to go to Medina University. And I called my brother up. He's, you know, one of the practicing people that I knew. And I told him, I said, listen, I've decided to go to Medina University. And he started laughing. And I was like, what's the deal? Why are you laughing? And he said, listen, you know, it's cool that you decided to go, but it doesn't work like that. It's not like you decide to go and you go. Basically, you have to apply, and then there's a very small chance that you'll get accepted. But alhamdulillah, I got accepted, and Allah Azza wa Jal gave me the chance to go. So that's kind of why you see that. I started off with graphic design, and then eventually I ended up in Medina University. Now, the next question is, can you give some advice regarding memorizing the Quran? In terms of advice, I would have three main pieces of advice. Number one is sincerity. Constantly renew your intention. Understand why you're memorizing the Quran. It's the purpose of memorizing the Quran is not to be known as a hafiz, and that's the wrong intention. The intention of I want to lead salah and lead tarawih and all that, and that's why I want to memorize the Quran. That's the wrong intention. To be known as hafiz al-Quran, like I said, is the wrong intention. The right intention is I want to memorize the Quran to gain Allah's pleasure and to make it to paradise. So that's why correcting our intention is very, very important. Number two is being consistent. Consistency is very, very important. If you're going to get anywhere with memorizing the Quran, you have to be consistent. And I'll share a personal story with you. I actually, for those of you who know me, I like working out, I like lifting weights, but I hate doing cardio. Now, I realized one day that the reason why I hate doing cardio is I used to believe that I have to do 45 minutes of cardio a day. And when I would think about doing 45 minutes, I wouldn't do it, because I would remember how painful that experience is. So what I did is I cut that down to 20 or 25 minutes a day, and when I started doing 25 or 20 minutes a day, I realized that I was able to do it every day. Because when I thought about cardio, it wasn't a painful experience that I thought of, so I was able to be consistent. The point is that memorize as much as you can be consistent with. So if it's a page a day, memorize a page a day. If you know that you can only be consistent in memorizing half a page a day, then do half a page a day. And if it's only one ayah, then memorize one ayah a day. Like I said, the most important thing is to be consistent in memorizing the Quran. The last piece of advice I would give in terms of memorizing the Quran is acting upon that which you memorize. And subhanAllah, you'll see that not all the companions, for example, not all of them were hafal, but they all acted upon that which they learned. And this is what made them special. Meaning it wasn't about being known as a hafiz, or it wasn't about just trying to memorize as much as you can. It was about learning the Quran and implementing the Quran in their lives. And the worst thing that we can do is show up on the Day of Judgment and have the Quran be a hujjah against us, a proof against us, instead of a proof for us. Okay, the next question, let's see here. What advice do you have for the students of knowledge living in the West? The advice that I have is, number one, as with memorizing the Quran, sincerity is everything. Learning the deen, studying Islam, seeking knowledge for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal, and not for the sake of simply being known as a student of knowledge or simply being able to give khutbahs and all that. That's the wrong intention. So firstly, like I said, with memorizing the Quran is having the correct intention. Having the correct intention. Secondly, I would say is taking things one at a time. And that's very, very important, I think, for students in the West, especially because we have access to information at our fingertips. So we have like Google and Wikipedia and stuff like that, and we're used to just getting knowledge as soon as we want it. So if we have an issue, we'll Google it and we'll get the knowledge immediately. And that is not the best way to study Islam. The best way to study Islam is to first study the basics and then build upon that, and then further build upon that. And that is the correct methodology of studying Islam. And I think a lot of times in the West, we just want to learn, and we lose out on actually benefiting from the knowledge that we have learned. The other thing I would say about seeking knowledge in the West is that it's important to actually have goals beyond studying Islam in English. And I know this is a little bit controversial, and some people say, listen, you can study Islam in English. I personally don't believe that. I believe that, yeah, you can get the basics of your religion, you can get the basics of your deen in English, and actually you can learn a lot in English. But to really, really study the deen in depth, I think it's integral for a student living in the West to learn the language of the Quran and the Sunnah. And that's the only way that a person's truly, truly going to have access to the knowledge. Wallahu alam. Next question. What's your favorite color? Sheikh Kamal likes pink. My favorite color is actually two colors. It's red and black, but not just red and just black. I like when red and black are placed next to each other. What is your nickname? I don't have a nickname. I do have a kunya though. My kunya is Abu Layth. Okay, this is interesting. Somebody asked, Desi food, Arab food, or Somali food? And it's interesting because it says Desi food, Arab food, and then in capital letters it says Somali food. So I assume this person is actually Somali. I would say my answer is none of the above. My answer is American food. And before you get upset, I will say, listen, I like Desi food. Desi food's good. Arab food's good too. I haven't had too much Somali food, but nothing will compare to a nice, juicy, well done cheeseburger and fries and a shake. So for that reason, I would have to say American food. Okay, the next question that got a lot of likes was, what class would you choose to teach? If Al-Maghrib that you choose, I cannot share that with you right now. Inshallah, you will find out soon enough what class I will be teaching. Okay, next question. There's a lot of questions, but not all the questions got a lot of likes. What is the best way to become a seeker of knowledge? The best way to become a seeker of knowledge is to say, I'm a seeker of knowledge. You can decide right now that you want to start seeking knowledge. There's no official way to start seeking knowledge. You basically make the intention that you want to seek knowledge for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal, and you become a student and you start seeking knowledge. If the question is, how do you go about doing it? I could do a video on that on its own. So I'm just going to put that aside for now. Tell us a joke, make it a good one. I will share with you a joke that I just read today actually. And it's good because I can't tell if you're going to laugh or not, so that'll be good. The joke is, what do you call a boomerang that doesn't work? And the answer is a stick. Anyway, moving on. Could you share with us the 5 most inspiring characteristics of your favorite teachers? Jazakumullah khair wa iyyak. The 5 most inspiring characteristics. I would say number 1, and these are all things that I have actually witnessed and seen from my teachers. So the first one I would have to say is humility. And I have seen this from a lot of my teachers, is to be humble. And, you know, a lot of my teachers, they're real sheikhs, and they've been studying Islam their whole life, and they're very, very knowledgeable. And even with that, they are very, very humble, yeah, in how they come across. So that's number one. Number two, I would say, is the level of ibadah and dhikr, the level of worship and remembering Allah Azza wa Jal. You would think that with their schedules and, you know, with all the responsibilities that they have, that they, you know, maybe ibadah, they do their ibadah, but you don't get time to just go all out in your ibadah, and that's actually very far from the truth. I still remember one of my teachers that was teaching me inheritance law. He walked into class one day, and he walked in a couple minutes early. Class hadn't started yet, but he came a little bit early, and he walked in, and he walked to the corner of the classroom, and he started praying, and I realized he's praying 2 rak'ahs of duha. So I realized, subhanAllah, that these sheikhs, these mashayikh, they do their ibadah whenever they get the chance, whenever they can, whatever opportunity they get their ibadah in. And even I remember riding in the car with one of my teachers, and instead of wasting time in talking about random stuff, he started making dhikr, saying subhanallah, walhamdulillah, wallahu akbar, la ilaha illallah. So the level of ibadah. Also, another characteristic is treating everyone with kindness and smiling and being nice to everyone. And this is something that I've seen from my teachers, is that, especially one teacher in particular, I still remember till this day that he would always be nice and kind and would always smile at everyone, whether it was a little kid or somebody old, whether it was somebody who was less knowledgeable than him or more knowledgeable, it didn't matter. Always being kind and always smiling and always treating someone nicely. And I think that goes back to the issue of humility. But that, subhanAllah, is a very, very inspiring characteristic. The other thing I would say, the last, I think, because I almost got to 5, is hard work. And I noticed that my teachers that have really reached a high level in knowledge, they're all hardworking people. And they spend a lot of time studying Islam. And you would think once somebody becomes a big sheikh, or once they're giving fatwa and all that, khalas, they're not going to study much Islam. But I noticed that some of my teachers, they would sit and they would take out hours from their day, and they would simply just sit and read for hours and hours and hours. So that's the last characteristic I would say. And there's many more, but those are I guess my top 5 when it comes to inspiring characteristics of my teachers. Okay, this is a good question. What is your advice for teens who are trying to stop listening to music? I would say that if you're trying to stop listening to music, one of the things that really helps is using your time for the worship of Allah Azza wa Jal, and always keeping your tongue wet with the remembrance of Allah Azza wa Jal. And the thing about remembering Allah and reciting the Quran and worshiping Allah is that you can fill your time with listening to music and watching movies and doing all that kind of stuff and doing all that, or you can fill your time with worshiping Allah and remembering Allah Azza wa Jal. And you'll see that the more you worship Allah, the less desire you'll have for music and all that kind of stuff. The more dhikr you make, for example, the less desire you'll have for music. That's number 1. Number 2, it's important to distance yourself from people who listen to music. And I know that may be hard, but that's something that actually really helps. If you're constantly around people that are listening to music, it'll become hard to quit music. So I would say decrease your exposure to music. So get away from people that listen to music. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Assalamu alaikum. At Ilmfest in Toronto, you mentioned that you were not a practicing Muslim before. For many people who are not practicing Muslims, usually they go through some hardship in life, and that makes them realize that this world is temporary, and that in times of hardship there is no one that can help us but Allah, and therefore they turn to Him and start to follow Islam. So I would like to ask, what was the turning point for you? Actually, unlike a lot of people, for me the turning point wasn't a hardship. It wasn't a calamity that struck me. For me, and I kind of mentioned this in my talk at Ilmfest, for me, there came a point in my life where I sat down and I said to myself, what is this all for? Is the purpose of my life to simply have fun? Because I realized that at a certain point, my goal in life was just to have fun, or to, make as much money as I can, for example, and all that kind of stuff. And I really sat down and I considered what life is about. And I started thinking about life, and it really made me realize that there has to be more to life than simply just trying to have fun or simply just partying and this and that. Life has to mean more than that. So when you're on your deathbed, you look back and what do you want to see? Do you want to see that you just spent your whole life chasing after this dunya? And that for me was a powerful thought, because I realized I don't want to be on my deathbed looking back and thinking, you know what, I just spent my whole life trying to have fun. So it's at that point that I really started to look for the purpose of life and the meaning of life, and it's at that point that, you know, I eventually came to Islam. Okay, this is an interesting question. What's your native language? That's a hard question to answer because my parents speak Urdu and Punjabi, but I have always spoken to my parents in English. So I've been speaking English pretty much since I was born, since I started talking. But my parents, their native language is Punjabi and Urdu. So I guess it would either be English or Punjabi and Urdu. It's only later on in my life that I learned Arabic. Okay, so I'm just going to take one last question. This got quite a bit of likes. And that question is, what is the most dearest thing to you in Medina besides the Prophet's mosque? SubhanAllah, you know, it's actually hard to answer this question because there's so many things about Medina that are dear to me. Just to mention a couple of the things besides the Prophet's masjid is, number one, the access to knowledge, the access to scholars, the access to people who are incredibly knowledgeable. And like I said, the access to real deal scholars, not just, you know, someone like me. That is something that I really miss and is very dear to me. Apart from that, the people that I met in Medina, the other students and the other people seeking knowledge, that's very dear to me. Other than that, I would say that just being in a place where I can devote my whole life to seeking knowledge and putting all my attention towards seeking knowledge, that's something that I miss quite a bit, and that was something that was very dear to me. And there's a bunch of stuff, there's a lot of things about Medina that are dear to me and that I miss very much. But I'm going to leave it at that, and I think this video is long enough as it is. So inshallah, I'm going to call it a day. And thanks for sending in the questions, inshallah, and I hope you got a better idea, a better picture of who I am. And I know a couple people asked, who are you? They said, who is Saad Tasleem? And the answer to that is, that's why I'm doing this video, so you get to know me a little bit better. Alright, until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.